On today's episode of the Live, Learn, and Play podcast, we are talking with Steve Chamness. He is a FAB dad and an advisor. FAB stands for Family Advisory Board, and he is an advisor to our HEMOC unit here at Arkansas Children's. And Steve is also the first dad we've interviewed, so welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
We are excited that you're here and excited to hear your perspective from a dad's point of view. So let's start with what brought you to Arkansas Children's, and we want to hear about your son, especially patient here, Zach. So tell us about Zach.
Yeah. So in November of 2013, Zach was 23 months old. We were diagnosed with desmoplastic nodular medulloblastoma, which is stage 4 brain tumor cancer. So we had quite a journey even leading up to that, but when we went from getting diagnosed to having brain surgery the next day and spending some time on the neuro floor and recovering from that, and then getting introduced to Dr. Sailors and Dr. Colorado, who really kind of initially sold us on ACH, and then going through our first round of chemo and coming home right before Thanksgiving, or right at Thanksgiving. That was kind of our first month here, was kind of a whirlwind, so to speak.
Okay, so backing up a little bit, you just shared a lot there.
Yes.
What first of all, what were some of the symptoms Zach had? And then what brought you here? And then, as you say, what sold you on Arkansas Children's?
Yeah, absolutely. So he started with fevers, and just kind of not really acting like himself at times, very, very clingy, which was not really his style for the first few months of his life. He was very independent right away, so the clinginess was like going backwards a little bit. So when he started running fevers consistently on and off, we began taking him into the doctor. We could never, for whatever reason, couldn't get into our PCP. So we just kept taking him back, and they kept telling us a different thing. Fever virus, he's got a cold, he's got, certainly it was never, hey, he's got a brain tumor, So time went on, we noticed he was having some trouble walking. And he would do some odd things, like he'd be playing, and then all of a sudden he would just kind of wander off and stop and just lay down flat on his back on the hardwood floor. And it was kind of odd. And then he was having problems walking, like down the hall. He'd put his little hand up against the wall as he walked down the hallway, and he really wanted to be carried almost everywhere. In the middle of October, I was called, my wife called me in the morning. I was working midnight shift at the time, and she said, hey, you're going to have to skip your workout this morning. You need to come home because he's running another fever, and I can't miss work today, so you have to stay, just come straight home. So I did, and went home and got him in bed, just kind of laid down and tried to keep him cool and comfortable, and I fell asleep. Well, he wakes me up by slapping me in the face and crying. And so we go into I feel his forehead, and he's just blazing hot, just on fire. And I'm like, oh my gosh, baby. So I scoop him up and I take him into the kitchen, and I'm standing there and he's crying, and I'm trying to get some Tylenol ready, to give him some Tylenol. And as I'm doing that, I'm watching him, and he kind of stops crying for a second, looks at me with this blank stare, and I was like, that's not right. And he started to fall backwards. I caught him right before he hit the ground, and he had a seizure right in my hands, which I've never had anything like that with my own child. Being in law enforcement, I've seen a lot of things, but when it's your own kid, it's definitely a big deal. And so I scooped him up after the seizure, took him straight to Children's, to the ER. I called my wife on the way and said, hey, meet me over there. So she did. They said it was a febrile seizure. He just got too hot too fast. But they wanted to schedule him for an EEG to make sure that he wasn't epileptic or anything like that. So that was kind of the concern at the time.
So tell us more about your expectations from the EEG. What were you thinking they were looking for or hoping to find?
My understanding was that it was basically to kind of measure brain waves and activity, and to rule out epilepsy. I think that was the main concern at that point for us. We got him home. We were finally able to get an appointment with Dr. Choate, who was our PCP at the time. He's retired now. God bless him. Wish he wasn't. But he brought us in, talked to us, listened to our story, and he was like, I really don't like the way that this is sounding and how long it's been going on. We're literally pulling onto the parking lot here at ACH and got the phone call from Dr. Choate. And he said, I hate doing this over the phone, but I know you guys are going to be at Children's this morning. I've already called Dr. Sharp. He's going to meet you on the neurology floor. I do not like what I see on this MRI. It looks like a tumor. It looks like medulloblastoma to me. And so we're just like getting all the air sucked out of you. We kind of wandered like a couple of zombies with Zach up to the neurology floor, and we're sitting in the waiting room after we check in, and the nurse comes out. She had no idea. God bless her. She was amazing. She came out and said, okay, we're ready for your EEG. When my wife just busted out in tears, I don't think we're going to need that. And she's like, oh my gosh. So she quickly ushered us into a room and got us out of the waiting room. And, we told her what our doctor had just told us, and that Dr. Sharp and Dr. Albert were on their way down to talk to us.
And I think it's worth noting, in your professional life, you are a police officer for North Little Rock. You are used to dealing with emergencies. How different was it when it was affecting you and your own son and your family?
I 100% will say that it was a completely emotional experience, being that it was personal. When I'm at work, see some pretty horrible, awful things, and it does affect you emotionally and personally, but it doesn't at that time because you're being professional, and it's your job to take care of people, and so that's what you want to do. But when it's your kid, it's definitely, kind of gets real at that point for in the moment.
So tell us more about what happened when you meet Dr. Sharp and what he says and what the next step is for Zach and for your family.
So Dr. Sharp was outstanding, amazing. He came in and got right to the point, said, this looks like medulloblastoma to me. We need to get a better picture of it, so we need to admit you guys right away. We need to get you in for an MRI tonight, sedated, so that we can get a good picture of it, and we'll be doing surgery tomorrow morning. And Dr. Albert was with him, and Dr. Albert is the one that did the surgery, and also just brilliant, amazing man. So that was kind of our next step, was just kind of getting that MRI and getting admitted for the night and calling family.
So that was a pretty quick change of events, coming in for what you thought was an EEG, and now you need surgery the next day. What was surgery day like, and how long did it take?
Wow. It was a blur. Looking back on it now, it took about 6 hours, a little over 6 hours, I think. Dr. Albert was able to get the entire tumor, which is a big deal if you're a medullo kid. It really decreases the chance of recurrence. So that was a big deal. The biggest thing I remember about that day was the waiting room. We had well over 100 people pass through the waiting room, from my work, from my wife's work, and from church. And some of them sat there all day with us. And that was a big deal. That was kind of the first real sign of how much support we really had. After
surgery, what happens next? What is Zach's prognosis? How is your family feeling, and what are the next steps?
Okay, so we were up on the neuro floor and recovering, and actually went to PICU for a little while, and then we went to neuro. On neuro, Dr. Sailors and Dr. Colorado came in to visit with us. that was really the defining moment for my wife and I as far as ACH goes. Dr. Sailors and Dr. Colorado came in and laid it all out and said, this is what you have. This is what the treatment protocol is. Stay away from Dr. Google. It's not going to be good. He was prepared. I swear the man should give a class on bedside manner for doctors. He's the most amazing, brilliant man I've ever met, I think. He had literature with him, gave it to us to educate us, said, these are your options. Here's where you can go, laid it all out. Said, your treatment protocol is going to be similar here. It's going to be the same here. It's going to be similar here. And then he ended with, the bottom line is, we want to treat your child here at ACH. We believe we can beat this here. And that was all we needed to hear. My wife and I were like, yeah, okay. Yeah, you couldn't get us, at that moment, we were dug in like ticks. You couldn't get us out of here. We were ready to do what we needed to do.
So you met with Dr. Sailors and Dr. Colorado, and you said that was a defining moment, and you chose Zach's care here, but you could have gone somewhere else. What were your thoughts about going somewhere else compared to Arkansas Children's?
Yeah, so at the time, we really didn't know what to do. We didn't know, we knew we had options. We knew there were other children's hospitals. We knew that. But we were still kind of in that state of shock, and with Dr. Sailors, he was able to kind of lay it on the line and really explain things in a way that we understood. And I've thought about this a lot over the years since, from diagnosis on to where we're at now. And the best way that I can describe the way that he kind of handled himself is professionalism delivered with empathy. And that was really not the first time that I had experienced that here. And I've continued to experience that here.
So now Zach now you talked about from diagnosis to now, your role here at Arkansas Children's has changed. You've gone from just being a patient family to actually getting involved with our family advisory board and being an advisor for our HEMOC unit. Why is that important for you to give back in that way?
Well, to me, it is all about staying connected and making sure that I'm giving back to everyone that gave so much to us. They gave us more than just our son back. They gave us hope. They gave us a family, a family that you never wanted to have, but you're so glad you had. You didn't know about these wonderful people until you had this experience. So it's a bad experience to have, but if you got to do it, you want to do it with the right people. So I want to give back to those people and help them as much as I can possibly help them. And about these families and these kiddos, and just taking care of them and loving on them and just making sure that they have everything that they need while they're struggling.
So what exactly does being an advisor look like?
Right. So it's kind of I look at it, I don't know how much of an advisor I am, but I look at it as a listener. I listen to families, I listen to issues, I listen to where they're happy, things that we could do better. I listen to what their needs are, and just try to find ways to educate them if they need information, and ways to assist them and ways to empower them and help them along through their journey. And as far as like what I do, I will literally do anything. I will go get pizza. I will clean a bathroom. I do not care. I'm not beyond doing anything. I would do anything for ACH. I'd do anything for those families.
Excellent. One of the nursing directors here has said that you have a saying that you can't have Zach without ACH.
Yes.
Tell us more about what that means.
Yeah, sure. So, we kind of came up with that later in our experience. it's kind of hit us one day, Zach's name, Zach. It's, Zachary being his full name. He goes by Zach, and I was like, you can't spell Zach without ACH, and we couldn't have Zach without ACH. His life was saved many, many times here, and he spent a lot of time on the vent in PICU. 3 stem cell transplants. A lot of kids don't, make it through 1 or 2 sometimes. And here at ACH, we've got a really good success rate. Without ACH, without the nurses, without the doctors, we wouldn't have Zach. So.
You mentioned earlier that Arkansas Children's gave you your son back. How did what changed after surgery? Because for the first 2 years of his life, really, it sounded like he was pretty sick and just lots of fevers. So what was life like with a almost over 2-year-old after surgery?
So really, we went through quite a bit with the treatment protocol and just getting him back to where he could start being a normal kid again, and that we weren't in the hospital, all the time. So really, it wasn't until we kind of finished radiation in August of 2014 that he was able to kind of start really being a normal kid. And we had the audiology stuff. He has some hearing loss from the chemo, so he wears hearing aids now, and things like that. A lot of families know that end of it. A lot of the medulla kids and stuff, especially, that go through that. And there's never been a point where Zach has not wanted to be lively. He always wanted to play, no matter how sick he was. We'd get out of bed. He wanted me to ride him around in the wagon. Of course, he was neutropenic at the time. We could only go in circles around 4K. And I know so many families up there understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying these things. But these kids are so resilient and amazing. And I know that the nurses, one of my questions when we first were admitted was, how do you do this with the kids all the time? And all the nurses basically tell you the same thing. It's like, we would rather be with these kids than adults. These kids are resilient. They don't, they're just in here fighting. They're all warriors, and they're all just, inspirational.
And Zach just celebrated a birthday recently. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Zach is 8 years old now. And this past August, we had it was kind of the biggest deal so far. Anyway, we had 5 years post-treatment. August 2nd. So August 2nd marked, he ended chemo on August 1st, 2014. So we're officially 5 years past post-treatment. So his 8th birthday was kind of a big deal. So yeah, that kid lives life like nobody I have ever seen. He's full of fire all the time.
So what does 8-year-old Zach like to do?
Everything. He loves to run. This kid loves to run. I don't think he walks too many places, especially inside, which is a problem from time to time. But he loves to run. He loves basketball. In fact, he got a basketball goal for his birthday, which I'm still putting together. But he loves sports. He loves running, and he loves laughing. I think that he's probably the class clown of his class. He's constantly trying to joke around and have fun, and he gets more out of life, I think, than anybody I've ever known.
You mentioned Dr. Sailors. Is there any other person or a story that you will take with you from Arkansas Children's? So many, like literally thousands. I know that you guys probably can tell I can talk for a long time about this stuff, but without crying, I'll do my best to think of a couple things here. First and foremost, I got to love on my nurses, the 4K nurses, and we had nurses from PICU that were amazing. We had, Mindy from PICU was one of Zach's favorites, and there were so many others that were great on neuro and everywhere else.
But our 4K nurses, we just love them to pieces. They could not be more special to us, and they could not be more important to those kids and families up there. There were several times when I credit a nurse specifically for saving his life. Crystal and Julia are two that Julia was the first one to send Zach to PICU, and he went on my older son's birthday on April 25th of 2014. I'll never forget it. I was supposed to go home that night to be with Kyle, my older son, who's now 13. Instead, we went to PICU. And I can remember he wanted to be next to me all the time, so they just put me in the bed and let him lay on my chest, and they wheeled us down to PICU in that bed. This was all because Julia noticed some things about his breathing and about his skin color and some things that was not correct and didn't look good. So I can remember when we pulled into the room and Julia and Laura had walked down with us, and I picked up my phone and I dialed my wife's number, and when she answered the phone, I couldn't talk. And Laura took the phone from me and talked to my wife for me out in the hall, and got my wife here. And that was kind of our first trip down. Our third trip down was due to Crystal. She noticed some things about his skin tone and breathing, and the doctor, God bless her, at the time was a resident, and I do not think she knew really what to do. Crystal had no problem pulling pushing the button and getting the crash team up, and got Zach down there. And that day he was intubated, which watching Dr. Green and the nurses in PICU do that was absolutely amazing. It was like watching, I kind of went out of my body for a little minute because of just the situation, the gravity of the situation. Your kid's getting intubated was scary enough, but watching them do their job in that moment and watching Dr. Green like a conductor orchestrating everything, absolutely amazing. I could not have more respect for those people.
And going back to your family advisory board and advisory service, when did it hit you that I need to get involved and give back to other families?
So I think initially it was any time that we were in the hospital, we wanted to make sure that, and this could be for anything, we wanted to make sure that we took Zach up to 4K. We wanted the nurses to see him and to see a success story and to see how well he's doing, because it's not all, it's rough job sometimes up there, and those nurses really go through a lot. We want them to see something that they did, and so it kind of started with that. And then one day in clinic, when we were in clinic for an appointment, I saw a handout that said Family Advisory Board for 4K for HEMOC. And I was like, what? This is a thing? I can do this? Yeah, I've got to do this. I have to do this. This is absolutely the most important thing you could do. And it gave me a way to help and to stay connected and to be a part of this amazing hospital.
Steve, we are so glad you are part of our Family Advisory Board and an advisor here. So thank you for all you do for patients and families here at Arkansas Children's. And happy birthday, belated birthday to Zach, and thank you for your time.
I'm proud to do it. I'm honored to do it. I love to do it, and I'll be involved here as long as y'all let me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.